Our word of the week this week continues our series on words that have more than one meaning based on the context in which they're used. Thanks to friend of the channel Steve for giving us this rich trough to mine. And also thanks to friend of the channel Noel for a specific request for this week's word of the week, which is telos. And telos means end. This is a rehash of a previous word of the week. We've looked at telos in the past, but today we're going to look at the aspect of it as having different meanings based on the context in which it's used. First up, end in the sense of termination or cessation. And this comes from Luke chapter 1, verse 33. The reading is from the ESV, and then we'll take a look at part of the verse in Koine underneath. And he will reign over the house of Jacob forever, and of his kingdom there will be no end. And so that last part is, kaites basileas autou, and of the kingdom of him, and of his kingdom, uk estai. Estai is a future tense form of the verb eimi, shall be. There shall not be, telos, an end. So the kingdom of him is not going to have a cessation or a termination. It's going to be a kingdom that goes on and on and on without an end. Great stuff. Next up, we're going to look at end as the last part or the close of something or a conclusion. So something that has run its course and come to a finish. First up, Matthew 24:6. And you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not alarmed, for this must take place, but the end, telos, is not yet. Okay, so there'll be things happening, but that doesn't mean that the end has come yet. There's more to come. Let's jump down and look at 1 Corinthians 15:24. Then comes the end, telos, when he delivers the kingdom to God the Father after destroying every rule and every authority and power. So he says now there will come a point in time when all has been completed and done and the kingdom is handed to the Father. That in fact will be the end, the conclusion, the close, the last part. Moving on, now we're going to look at telos as a purpose, a goal or a purpose. And this is probably the most common use of the word telos. We get our English word teleology, the study of the end, from it. Telic principles, things that have to do with a thing's intended purpose or goal. First up, we're looking at James chapter 5, verse 11. Behold, we consider those blessed who remain steadfast. You have heard of the steadfastness of Job, and you have seen the purpose of the Lord, totelos kurio, the purpose of the Lord, how the Lord is compassionate and merciful. So the purpose, the ESV translates totelos here as purpose, even though it is literally the end. So the Job story illustrates God's purpose in allowing struggle and suffering. And James tells us, and that it ends in compassion and mercy. Like, even though it doesn't look like it, God's purpose is still there in struggling and suffering. Let's look at two more examples of telos as purpose. Next is Romans 10, verse 4. For Christ is the end, telos, of the law for righteousness to everyone who believes. And the next one is 1 Timothy 1:5. The aim, telos, of our charge is love that issues from a pure heart and a good conscience and a sincere faith. I want to jump back to Romans for a second. Some people will argue that Romans 10:4 is the first kind of use of telos, that it's a termination or a cessation. Christ is the termination of the law. Christ is the end of the law in the sense that he's the cessation of the law. And if the phrase ended there, we might accept that as a notion, that Christ is telos, of nomos, of the law. But it doesn't end there. It goes on and says, unto righteousness. So within the context, there's a limiter on how it's ending it. And it makes more sense here in that context that Christ is the purpose of the law leading unto righteousness. The righteousness is supposed to, the law is supposed to lead you to Christ so that you can actually have righteousness, whereas keeping the law didn't lead to righteousness because everybody kept breaking the law, right? So almost certainly not saying that telos in Romans 10:4 is talking about cessation, but purpose. The purpose of the law is to lead people to Christ so that they could experience real righteousness and not strive for righteousness through law keeping and ultimately fail. Moving on to our final example today, we're going to see telos speaking about the result rather than the purpose. And this is kind of a fine line between purpose and result. It always is. But I think you'll see in the context of the verse that it's definitely talking about telos as a result. This is 1 Peter chapter 1, verses 8 and 9. Though you have not seen him, you love him. Though you do not now see him, you believe in him and rejoice with joy that is inexpressible and filled with glory, obtaining the outcome, totelos, of your faith, the salvation of your souls. So what is the result of faith? It's the salvation of your soul, because you were saved by grace through faith, not by works, so that no one has any basis for boasting. So the ESV even translates telos here as the outcome, the result. The result of your faith is the salvation of your souls. There are many, many occurrences of the word telos in the New Testament. Bust out your concordance or your computer and look at a bunch of them and have fun looking at the context and placing whether they're talking about a cessation or a conclusion or a purpose or a result. There are even some other interesting ones. The word tax, strangely, comes from the same root as telos. It's the end price that is paid for being a citizen, for being an attendee of the temple, or et cetera, et cetera. So interesting word, great word. Thank you very much to Steve for the category, words that have different meanings based on the context in which they're used. And thank you very much, Noel, for pointing us towards this epic example of how the different meaning changes the meaning of the verse and has deep and profound significance to what we're reading. Thank you everyone for watching, and until next time, Charis Kairene Humin, grace and peace to you.